Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Chet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, yes, there was a very boring football game last night on Thursday Night Football. Yes, the MLB playoffs have officially started, but we are getting so close to the start of the NBA regular season, and frankly, that's all we really care about, Sap. And so with that, there's plenty of stories to talk about in the NBA. But one that, we've been paying very close attention to here in Boston, Sap, is what's going on exactly with the Ime Udoka situation and the Boston Celtics. Yes, they've had a press conference and he's suspended for a year, but the details have been pretty scant. We learned a little bit more yesterday from an article from the Daily Mail, which, is a UK outlet, I'm pretty sure. Correct, Sap?
Yeah, UK tabloid. And this story is so interesting because it involves Nia Long. Not that she's a central character in the story, but of course she is Ime Udoka's fiance. So now you've got the Daily Mail, the tabloid in Great Britain that's involved, TMZ. This is more than a sports story. You've got the tabloid feel to it. You've got Hollywood involved. A lot of other things are involved with this. So now it's going to continue on and on and on. And the more I can think of this is that we don't know all the details. I think there'll be more details coming out probably on a daily or weekly basis. And then you can start to form your opinions on, is this year-long suspension just punishment for Ime Udoka?
Right. So we're getting details sort of trickling out. It's because I think we said this like a week ago, Sap. Now there's too many people who know. It's been tried to be as buttoned up as possible with the Celtics organization, but inevitably somebody is going to say something because now there's just too many players involved. Not literally players, but I'm saying people who have now heard the story directly, whether it be from Ime Udoka himself, Nia Long, whoever. And so essentially what this Daily Mail piece indicated was, and we're not going to name the woman here on the podcast because we're not a tabloid and I don't want to do that, and neither do you, Sap. So we're going to avoid doing that. But it basically, was indicating exactly who the woman in question was who had this relationship with Ime Udoka. And it went on to basically say that the relationship was consensual and that the woman in question had a close relationship, not a sexual relationship, but a close family friendship with former Celtics head of basketball operations, Danny Ainge. And that opens up a whole nother can of worms, Sap, and to something that you alluded to, that maybe it was Danny Ainge who tipped off somebody or something, and that's how this whole situation became a public situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not wrong that often, but I feel vindicated a little bit by this because as we read the story in the Daily Mail, this woman in question has been with the Celtics for nearly a decade. She went to college with Danny Ainge's daughter. I think they have a close relationship. She has a close relationship with the Ainge family. And her job with the Celtics was to book flights, take care of accommodations for players, their families. And since Ime Udoka had been coach of the Celtics, she was also working with Nia Long in terms of certain things for her, travel accommodations and so forth. So she served in that role. And we're finding out that this relationship with Ime Udoka started during the playoffs and ended around July, and that the Celtics knew about it, but it got heightened when she went forward with saying that there were certain things that Ime Udoka had said to her at the beginning of the relationship. So if he had said those things at the beginning of the relationship, why did she carry on? The only way I can read into this, and again, we have to read into it because we don't know all the details, is that at a moment it was consensual until one of them wanted to end it. And I'm thinking it was probably Ime Udoka who said, oh boy, I better end this thing. It may cost me my job. It may obviously cost me my relationship with Nia Long. So let me move on. And maybe the person in question wanted to keep it going. And her way of getting back at Ime Udoka was to spill the beans. I've thought all along that somehow Danny Ainge was involved in this. He's a bitter guy. I think he has a vendetta against the Celtics. They fired him. He did not retire a year and a half ago. He got fired. He's now running the Utah Jazz, and I think he wants to get back at the Celtics. And whether he got his dirty hands involved in this at some point, maybe he was the person who gave the heads up to Woj that this story was unfolding. Who knows? And then from what I can also gather here is that a doorbell, which can serve as a microphone, I guess. I mean, you probably know this stuff better than I do.
Doorbell.
A ring doorbell can serve as a microphone. So, we now do live in, East Germany circa 1982, with the Stasi can listen to all of our conversations apparently. But that may have also heightened things. And if this woman's husband got involved, went to the Celtics and said, well, what are you going to do about this? It does sound like, Days of Our Lives or
very much,
General Hospital or something like that. And it just continues on because it still doesn't feel like the punishment fits the crime until we hear more about this. And again, we've heard Matt Barnes talk about how it's 100 times uglier than we first thought. So I don't know where that goes. Gary Washburn, who covers the Celtics for the Boston Globe, said the details are ghastly. So these are breadcrumbs that are out there. What does all that mean? I think we're going to find out in due time. And here are the Celtics. They went ahead and suspended the coach for a year. I don't think he's ever going to coach for the Celtics again. He may never coach again in the NBA. And from what we gather also from Stephen A. Smith, who was on the Breakfast Club podcast, is that the Celtics are penalizing Ime Udoka half of his salary. He was to make $3 million this year. He's going to make $1.5 million. I said at the time that difference, the $1.5 million, as we find out, or if Stephen A. Smith is actually correct on this, is going to go to pay the legal fees that the Celtics went ahead and brought in a prominent law firm to investigate this. So it's all starting to fit, right? Like we're starting to connect the dots, but I still think that Danny Ainge has some role in this. And let's not forget, Danny Ainge's son, Austin Ainge, still works for the Boston Celtics. No, you have that involvement as well.
Right. Yeah. I think you really you really hit the nail on the head, alluding to it being like a soap opera, Sap, like Days of Our Lives or something like that. Because now you're getting people who used to be involved in the organization get involved, like a Danny Ainge, and his son is still here, as you just said. And is it a woman scorned? Is it a man scorned? I don't know. And, the thing that strikes me, Sap, is that we've had, like you said, those breadcrumbs of Gary Washburn and Matt Barnes say so much worse than, you're hearing. But that's not any details. That's just a very, just sort of a reaction of something that may be some privileged information. But based off of the few details that we do have, which are, again, very few, it does seem like, if you're just solely looking at what we have, that's all I'm saying, that it was a massive overreaction by the Celtics. Again, that's all we can operate on, Sap, is what we have right now. And if it was like the Daily Mail attested to, just a consensual relationship, yes, a little bit gross. Both people have families. Certainly not something that you want to happen. But should that warrant becoming the media circus that this has become, and warrant, a guy getting suspended for a year, possibly losing his job? I don't think so, based off of just, again, what we have in front of us. Now, if more details come out and it is exactly as Matt Barnes, Gary Washburn have said, okay, then you say, hey, Celtics, you were right here. Maybe you even should have fired the guy, which we've said all along. But it's such a confusing and complex story, Sap, because we have some people who do know all the details, and then we have the rest of us who don't, and we're sort of left to fend for ourselves in terms of making a determination about what the Celtics did or didn't do in terms of aptly punishing Ime Udoka.
And we're going to find these details out in staccato form. It's not going to just drop all at once, because I think they're going to have to sneak these things by their editors, whether they're in print or online, or past the lawyers, because the lawyers are involved as well. And it feels almost like a trial. When you watch a trial and the defense attorneys get up to have their opening statements, right away you go, well, that person's not guilty, because you're only hearing one side of the discussion, right? And I think we're getting most of this information from one side. When the other side weighs in, which may be a week, a month, who knows how long, then we can kind of form our opinion. I still go back to, it's just an ugly story, but in the total landscape of the Boston Celtics, how Robert Williams is, how his knee is, When is he going to come back, and how is he going to be when he comes back is a much bigger story than Ime Udoka is no longer coaching the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla is right now. And again, we give Ime Udoka a lot of credit for the turnaround last year, but to me, the biggest question for the Boston Celtics is Robert Williams III, his health. That means more than how far this team is going to go this year than who's coaching the team. At least that's how I look at it right now, is we're a little more than a week away from starting the season.
Right. It's a players' league, Sap. It's always going to be a players' league. We look at coaching is important, and I think sometimes it gets undervalued in the NBA. But at the end of the day, it's obviously the health and skill of your roster is going to be what determines, your championship aspirations. So yes, Robert Williams' health is more important than whatever's going on with Ime Udoka. When you're going into a season with so many expectations, you don't want a dark cloud hanging over you. And that's unfortunately what the situation has become with the Celtics. Is it possible for them to overcome it? I would say yes, absolutely. They do have young guys in this team, but those young guys have been in the NBA for a while now. And Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart, and that, you also have veterans like Al Horford and now Blake Griffin. And so I do think the team has the right makeup of players to be able to overcome it. But as you said, Sap, the Ime Udoka thing, it's an ugly story, but it's something that is not necessarily a death knell for the team.
Yeah, they have time to recover from that without question.
Yeah. So moving on to another bit of ugliness in the NBA, Sap, that just happened this past week, and actually it's just gotten much more intriguing today. We heard about a practice scuffle between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole on the defending champion Golden State Warriors, that Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole during a practice, something that has happened with Draymond Green before. And then it seemed like, it's going to be handled internally. The team's going to move on. Green apologized. It's not a big deal. Jordan Poole's not hurt. But then via TMZ, our old friends at TMZ, Sep, today, the video dropped. And now the Golden State Warriors might have to actually suspend Draymond Green because the video is not pretty. Essentially, Draymond Green sucker punched Jordan Poole right on camera. Somebody in the Golden State Warriors organization leaked it to TMZ, probably got a nice little payday from them. And as we saw, and we've talked about many times, Sap, with the Ray Rice case, when there's visual evidence, things change and public perception changes. And now with this visual evidence of Draymond Green cold cocking his own teammate, I should say, I don't see how the Warriors can't suspend him now for a few games, and that I'm sure the NBA will put pressure on them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2022. I mean, these things happened in the 80s and the 90s with Michael Jordan, in the 90s cold cocking Steve Kerr, but we didn't have video evidence. Now that we have video evidence, the punishment will take place. And again, give credit to TMZ, by hook or by crook, any means possible, they get the video in their hands, they drop it, and now we can see what happens. And the thing with Draymond Green is we're both fans of Draymond Green, but there are times where he goes a little bit too far. The thing that I push back on Draymond Green is the thing that really pissed me off in the finals is how he became the guardian, the gatekeeper of who could have an opinion on basketball, because now there's this new media and he talks about it. There's a new media, right, which he's part of, right? Like, great. He's got a podcast. It's successful. It's on the Volume Network, which is owned by Colin Cowherd. A Cowherd I love, but also Cowherd is a coward at times, because you like that one, huh? Yes. I did a lot of thought into that. Good one. But he never badmouths Draymond Green. Right. He says, well, Draymond Green, this is what he offers your team. He's the muscle. He's the guy who keeps everybody in line and blah, 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 blah. Well, again, he's a business partner with Colin Cowherd, is Draymond Green. He's not going to criticize Draymond Green. He never criticizes Russell Wilson, who is taking the quarterback position back to the Stone Ages with the way he's played so far this year. If Aaron Rodgers had played the way Russell Wilson played this year, Colin Cowherd would have 6 segments a day knocking Aaron Rodgers. But because it's his friend, Russell Wilson, he won't criticize him. And again, I love Colin Cowherd. I think he's the best at what he does. But sometimes you have to criticize people you like. I mean, how many times have we talked about LeBron James and I've criticized him? It happens. He's my favorite player, but I will criticize him. I criticize Aaron Rodgers all the time. Again. All the time. I do it all the time, because that's what you have to do. You sound silly if you don't. Now, again, Colin Cowherd makes about $6.5 million a year, so he's laughing all the way to the bank. But the thing with Draymond back in the finals, he was like, I don't think that person should even talk about basketball. They didn't play in the NBA. Well, all right. Well, you didn't go to broadcast journalism school either, Draymond, and now you're hosting a podcast. So like, pull back, brother. That's all I can say to Draymond. And again, I like him. I think he serves a real purpose in the league. I think he's going to be spectacular on TV when he retires. He's a key role player for the Golden State Warriors. But what he did with Jordan Poole, yeah, that's going to be a suspension. And you go from there. And again, he's had rough relationships with some of his teammates, with the exception of two, right? Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, because those are the guys that run the Golden State Warriors. He's not going to dare ever.
Everybody likes them. Right? Have they ever done anything that anybody didn't like? They're very likable guys.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, but he went at it with Kevin Durant. I mean, a big reason Durant, after 3 years, said enough of this.
The main reason.
He couldn't deal with the main reason. And again, Durant, we could say, is soft. And Draymond's kind of a throwback type player because he has to be. He's not as skilled as those guys. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be some sort of suspension, fine, whether it comes from the league or from the team. And, but this is kind of what he does.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean,
you can't punch a teammate. It's 2022. Again, Jordan did it. Kobe did it. Those guys are sociopaths, but they also were the best player on their team. And at the point, the best player in the league. So they got away with a little bit more than Draymond Green can get away with, because he, again, is a high level role player and an important one, but he's not at that level.
Right. I mean, he, in a way, he's fortunate that it resulted in just like, he knocked him down and it was what it was. But, we've seen before with like punches to the face. You
Sure.
never know. And we talk about CTE all the time. And I'm not saying this would, one punch would necessarily give somebody CTE, but, we talk about go back in the NBA. And I know this happened in a game, but Kermit Washington, Rudy Tomjanovich, and ended Rudy Tomjanovich's career. And he dealt with, long-term issues from it. So, it's a dangerous thing. Draymond Green's a big dude. And if you're going to go cold cocking, a teammate in the face, there's a very good chance it doesn't end up with this scenario that it did, where the guy's fine and everything's okay. It could be a dangerous situation. So Draymond Green is fortunate that, it's a guy that, is his teammate and they probably get along for the most part, and that he was okay, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, if Jordan Poole slips and falls and hits his head, and again, I'm going to the extreme level, but it does happen. I mean, we've heard these stories,
right,
and
not,
again, like you said,
it's not impossible.
No, and again, Draymond Green's what, 6'6", 240 pounds. He's a pro athlete. Basketball players don't generally throw the best punches. I mean, hockey players are much better at it, but hockey players do it within the context of the game. And I've spoken out that I'm not a big fan of fighting in hockey. I think at some point it kind of ruins the game. But yeah, this is not a good look for the Golden State Warriors and Draymond Green. It certainly isn't. But this is who Draymond Green is. He's a guy who's very pugnacious. He likes to push back. He will fight with the media. He'll fight with his own teammates. He certainly will fight with opponents. So, and this is what he needs to fuel him, right? Because he's not a highly skilled guy. In a sense, he is, right? I mean, the way he plays, I think he's a very bright player, great passer, tremendous defender. I mean, he understands his role perfectly, and you need guys like that on the team to succeed. And he gets all of that, but there's times where he just goes a little bit too far. And again, my biggest pushback with him is him telling the masses who can and can't speak about basketball. I just find that like laughable. It's like, okay, you've got a new media, do your thing, let the rest of us do our thing. And again, we're just talking basketball too. We're not weighing in on medical advice for people that are dealing with cancer or diabetes. It's basketball. If we have differing opinions, so be it. Let's have some fun over that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that mentality with sports with, and it's not just Draymond Green. It's a lot of athletes throughout different sports who have, gotten upset with members of the media or fans and saying, you can't talk about it. You never played it. Well, that's silly. I mean, you can understand basketball and understand the nuances of it and coach it or understand or be a general manager and never had played the game at the NBA level. It's not, yes, the players have a different perspective, but just because you played doesn't automatically mean that you are more of an expert than somebody who didn't play. They can have just as much of an understanding. Like you said, Sepp, it's not, rocket science or, something that you have. A doctor who studies something is not the same thing as a player who's played. It's two different things.
Exactly.
But, so I totally agree with you there. And whenever players say that in any sport, it does irritate me. Something else, Sap, that's irritating me is I'll do a professional transition here is what's going on in LA right now. And I always look for a chance to rip your guy LeBron. And I'm going to do so today, Sap, as he's poised to break the NBA's all-time scoring record this season, held by the great Kareem Abdul Jabbar. The also great Kareem Abdul Jabbar, not just his on-the-court accomplishments, but his off-the-court accomplishments. And he's done some great work this week, ripping my enemy number one, Kyrie Irving, on his Substack, and calling him basically a buffoon. And he's had some not so nice things to say about LeBron in the past, specifically in regards to the vaccine, and that LeBron did not come out advocating it immediately. And Kareem wasn't happy about that. And now there's this whole specter of LeBron breaking Kareem's record going on this season. So Lakers media asked LeBron exactly, what his relationship was with Kareem Abdul Jabbar. And LeBron said he has no relationship with Kareem, and kind of kept it short. And it does not, in fact, it seems like it's an icy relationship, if anything. So Sap, as our resident LeBron expert, how do you read into this?
Well, the thing is, I don't know if Kareem has a relationship with anyone that plays basketball or played basketball. And again, Kareem...
Did he have a good relationship with Shaq, or am I making that up?
I think he did, but I don't think it was like total kumbaya. I mean, talk about two totally different guys. I mean, Kareem's this deep thinker who was an incredibly conditioned athlete who, really was delving into so many of the social issues of the time. He just, somebody writes op-ed pieces in the New York Times. And then you got Shaq, who's kind of this larger than life personality, oftentimes didn't take care of himself, would spend the off season probably putting 20 or 30 pounds on. It at times felt like a clown, although we love Shaq. He's just a lovable guy. Like, maybe they had a relationship because opposites attract, but Kareem's always been kind of a loner. When he was with the Lakers, I think he tolerated Magic Johnson because he realized that Magic would help him win, because Kareem only won one title without Magic. Now, Magic didn't win any titles without Kareem, but together they were obviously, Magic. So I look at it that Kareem didn't have a lot of relationships with his contemporaries or even the modern players, because he's a different guy. LeBron's 1,326 points away from breaking the all-time scoring record, which, by the way, Kareem has held since 1984. It's been 38 years since he's held that record, which is amazing. It's more than half of his life. He can wake up in the morning and go, I'm the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. That's going to end probably in February, depending on how many games LeBron plays this year. I'd say 50 games into the season, or 50 games played by LeBron, he'll break the record. I just think that there's some resentment there on Kareem's part because LeBron is a billionaire, and Kareem, obviously made a good amount of money, but I don't think he invested wisely. There'd been a fire at his home and he lost his jazz collection. So, he probably looks at LeBron and says, man, if I was playing in these times, what would I be making? And that's something that a lot of the old time players will say. You look at the salaries of what even like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson made. They probably, if they ever talk to each other, which I think they have a good relationship, like, man, imagine if we were playing today, we'd be making $50 million a year easily, because they'd still be two of the top 3 or 4 players in the league. And I think some of the old players resent the new players. And I also think there's a thing where the former Lakers, and again, there are no such things as former Lakers. I think Kobe, may he rest in peace, would still consider himself a current Laker. Kareem as well, although Kareem not as popular as Kobe or Magic. I think they all kind of like give LeBron the Heisman because he's just a hired gun. They brought him in. He doesn't feel like a Laker. He plays for the Lakers, but he's not of the Lakers. You get what I'm saying?
Mercenary.
He's a mercenary. Exactly. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you so much, Jet. You're like the personal thesaurus for me. So I think when I think of LeBron, I think of him as a Cleveland Cavalier. Playing 11 years in Cleveland. That's who drafted him. He's from Northeast Ohio. He went to Miami to win championships. Even in Miami, it was still always Dwayne Wade was more popular. And with the Lakers, let's not forget, for the first, 15 years of his career, Laker fans pushed back and said, well, you're not Kobe. So are they going to make a quick switch at the last moment as soon as he signed? Even when he won the title, when he joined them, they're like, you're not Kobe. To this day, Laker fans don't think he's Kobe, which I think is laughable. I think he's I wouldn't say significantly greater player than Kobe, but a better player than Kobe.
And he could win the next 3 titles, Sap. They're not going to put him over Kobe. The Laker fans.
No,
it's not going to happen.
Among Laker fans, the pecking order is Kobe Magic or Magic Kobe. And it's probably more Kobe because, again, he's more contemporary. And then after that,
depends on the age. Yeah.
Depends on the age. Exactly. And then after that, it's probably Jerry West for like the real old people. And Kareem falls somewhere down the pecking order. I know we're talking about Kareem because, again, Kareem played center. He was a standoffish type of guy. He was a loner. He was not lovable. He just wasn't.
He started as a buck.
Well. And he started as a buck, exactly. And look, I love Kareem because at a very young age, he was very active socially, social justice warrior, sitting down with the likes of Bill Russell, Jim Brown,
Muhammad Ali,
Muhammad Ali, Tommy Smith, John Carlos. I mean, that was in the 60s. And I also think that Kareem at some point looks at LeBron and says, I like the fact that LeBron's involved with a lot of the social issues, but he probably looks at it that LeBron does it for branding more than being authentic about it. And also, I think the older guys also say, we had it a lot worse than you did. As much as there's still a lot of racism in this country, go back to the 60s, it was even worse. And
way worse.
Had to live through
absolutely.
that. Absolutely. Yeah. And Kareem was protesting the Vietnam War while he was at UCLA. I mean, it's a different time. So I think.
And the vaccine stuff, Sap, do you think that comes into it?
I think that has something to do with it too. And look, I wrote a column about that. I wish that Michael Jordan and LeBron had come out and supported it because they're still the 2 biggest Black athletes in the country. Heck, they're still probably the 2 biggest athletes in the country. And Jordan hasn't played professionally in 20 years. I mean, those 2 guys could have really sold the vaccine to their community, which was hesitant to take it, and rightfully so. And neither one really stepped up, whereas we saw Kareem and the great Bill Russell at an advanced age getting the vaccine. But again, those guys, they grew up at a different time. They were socially active because they really wanted to make change, and they were pushing back on the ugliness that they dealt with. LeBron's dealt with some ugliness. I will guarantee you that. But I think Kareem looks at LeBron maybe as a phony, or maybe as someone who's just doing this to build his brand. And that kind of, I think he would probably respect LeBron if he didn't weigh into these issues. And maybe at this point, Kareem respects Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan has the attitude of, I don't give an F, right? Like, no one's telling Michael Jordan what to do. Whereas LeBron, I think at times, oftentimes tries to appease everyone. And that sometimes can be looked at as being phony, almost like the way Richard Sherman despises Russell Wilson. Right. I mean, you could see that in the post-game show last night. Like, it was PTSD for Richard Sherman. He's yelling after the game, run the ball on 4th and 1. He's having a flashback to Super Bowl 49. So I think that's part of what goes on. I want to see when LeBron breaks this record, is Kareem going to be in the building for it? I don't think he will be, because actually I don't think Wilt Chamberlain was in the building when Kareem broke his record, because those guys had kind of an icy relationship as well.
Yeah, and I don't know what the deal is right now with Kareem's current relationship with Jeannie Buss and the Lakers organization. I'm not sure. It would. I don't even know where he lives right now, if he lives in the Los Angeles area or not, and if it would be easy, because he's got some orthopedic issues that he's had to deal with, and obviously when you're as gigantic of a human being as he is, it's not so easy to just get on a plane and fly to places. Right. So we'll see. Sap, I've always kind of looked at LeBron as a little bit of a phony, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've, never fully embraced him, especially after he went to Miami. And I think that's, again, the same reason why a lot of people aren't big on Russell Wilson, because he's much more than LeBron. It seems like he's just a huge phony in that. I don't know that.
And he's nowhere near as good a player either, right?
No,
Russell Wilson tries to put himself in the category of Brady or Manning or Rodgers, and he's clearly not, he's just clearly not anywhere near Tom Brady, but then again, who is? but he's not Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers. He's, several steps below those guys, but he tries to paint himself as one of those guys. Whereas at least LeBron is in the discussion with Kareem, Bill Russell, and Michael Jordan as the greatest player in the history of the sport. That's the way I've always painted it. But there is certainly some sort of icy relationship. I wouldn't even say icy relationship because there probably isn't a relationship between Kareem and LeBron.
So who's it more on than Sap to be able to? I'm not saying they're ever going to be best friends, but
no.
It would be nice if Kareem was, like you said, in the building, and if LeBron would acknowledge, be like, wow, it's such a huge honor, like to play for the same team that Kareem did and break the record in the same jersey, and the sort of like a respecting of your elders thing. Like I don't know who it's on more to be able to thaw the relationship, but it'd be better for the league and honestly for the fans if those guys would at least attempt to have some sort of cordial relationship.
I think it's up to the younger player, the younger person. It is. I mean, LeBron is going to be 38 in December, Kareem's 75, so he's half his age. I always think that it's up to the younger person. It's like if a father and son have an icy relationship, to me, it's up to the son to try to repair it. Now, if it doesn't work, then the ball is in the father's court, or in that case, it's in Kareem's court. But I think the first move has to be made by LeBron. And if Kareem pushes back, then LeBron can say, look, I tried and it just didn't work. And then you can move on.
Yeah, it's so hard with guys with these massive egos too. It makes it exponentially harder.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Barry Bonds was breaking Henry Aaron's all-time home run record, and he did have a video that was played when Bonds broke the record, but he wasn't at the ballpark. But then again, he was also 75, 76 years old, like you said, especially with Kareem being 7'2" or whatever. It's not easy for a guy that age to get on a plane and travel cross country with a guy who's trying to break a record. Now, you can kind of pinpoint when the points record would be broken, right? A home run record, this thing could take 10 days, right? Like it did with Aaron Judge. We're waiting for
Roger Maris's son was at like every game for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it felt that way. Whereas with basketball, unless LeBron goes into a massive shooting slump, which that he's going to score his points, you can kind of say, okay, he's going to probably break it one of these 3 nights. It's like when Curry broke the 3-point record, you kind of pinpointed, okay, he's going to do it one of these 3 nights. So you get Ray Allen and Reggie Miller there to attend and congratulate Steph Curry on breaking that record. But yeah, to me, if there's a relationship there, it has to be LeBron. He's the younger guy. But again, you're right, Jed. You nailed it. You're talking about massive egos. They're not going to give in.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm glad that I know now, Sap, if there's ever an issue between you and me, that you expect me to be able to have to make the first move here, that I have to fix the relationship. Okay. Yep. Well, that's
up to you.
Fair. Sap, as we're wrapping up the show, we got about 5 minutes remaining. We have to talk really quickly about the exhibition contest we saw the other day between the presumptive top 2 NBA picks in this year's draft, Victor Wembanyama from France, and whose name I'm going to have to learn to pronounce a lot better than that, and Scoot Henderson of the G League Ignite team. They put on just an incredible show in their first head-to-head matchup. Wembanyama, who's the presumptive first pick, put up 37 points, 7 of 11 on threes, 5 blocks. Scoot Henderson was no slouch himself, 26 points, 11 of 21 from the floor, 5 rebounds, 9 assists. Teams are going to be tanking hard for those 2 guys. This is, those 2 guys are franchise-altering players.
Yeah, I mean, I call him Big Vic because that's easy enough, right?
There
Big
you go.
Vic. 7'3" with a similar offensive skill set to Kevin Durant. I mean, it's damn scary. He was 7'11" on 3-point shooting, and they weren't just catch and shoot 3-pointers like that. No one was covering him. He created his own shots in those situations. He can dribble.
It's crazy.
He can dribble. A similar skill set to Kevin Durant. I know it was 1 or 2 games that we've seen him, so we got to hold off before we compare anybody to Kevin Durant. But he's 7'3". He also had the 5 blocks, 9 rebounds. I mean, the guy can do it all out there. I mean, I tweeted out earlier today that in 5 years, the discussion of who's the best player in the NBA is going to come down to Giannis, who's from Greece, Big Vic, who's from France, Luka, who's from Slovenia, Nikola Jokic, who's from Serbia, and Joel Embiid, who's from Cameroon. Like, where have all the American players gone? I mean, like, who's the best American player, let's say in 5 years? Because
Scoot Henderson.
Scoot Henderson might be the guy. Maybe Jason Tatum or Devin Booker, right? Because those two guys made first team All NBA last year.
Yeah.
I think in 5 years, LeBron will be out of the league. And if Curry and Durant are still playing, they're not going to be as good as they are now. So the 5 best players in basketball in 5 years may be 5 foreign-born players, which
They might be.
It explains why the league is deeper now than it's ever been. When Jordan was the best player, or Kobe and Shaq, you didn't have all these foreign players that are just dominating the league. Now you do, and it's a great thing. But yeah, 7'3" with that skill set. You're so right, Jet. Teams are going to tank, whether it's going to be Utah, Oklahoma City, maybe Houston, San Antonio. The Knicks are never quite bad enough to get the first pick. They're always getting the 5th pick, and they don't get one of these great players. I'm sure the league would like to see Big Vic playing in New York. The team I want to throw out there, not Utah. No, you don't want to see him in Utah. That's for sure. I'd like to see him in Detroit because you got Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, right? I think they've already got building blocks there.
They're going to be too good.
Playing with those guys, they're going to probably be too good. I think they're a borderline playoff team. Orlando, so there's a bunch of teams out there that, you're going to have 6 or 7 teams tanking for these 2 guys. And again, Scoot Henderson's not a bad second choice. He looks like a stud. He looks like a John Morant type player. Not bad.
With a jump shot.
With a jump shot. This guy's 7'3" though. And with all that skill set. The only thing I'm hesitant on, those big guys, you got to watch out for the injuries. I mean, Porzingis was supposed to be a unicorn. He's been hurt throughout his career. Chet Holmgren is a guy who looks like he's already been hurt. But let's say Oklahoma City gets that pick. You got Chet Holmgren and Big Vic. That's pretty good building blocks right there with 2 gigantic guys that are highly skilled.
Yeah, that's almost 15 feet of player that you have.
And barely 400 pounds.
Yeah. So they're, barely 400 pounds. So yeah, it should be, we're going to be obviously talking a lot more about those 2 guys. I think as the season progresses, they play more of these exhibition games, or the G League season goes on, the France League season goes on, and teams are going to be racing to the bottom. I'm going to make my prediction right now that Wembanyama ends up on the Spurs, because when they have a chance to get a really good player in the lottery, they got Tim Duncan last time. So that's my guess. But yeah, a really, really spectacular performance by both of those guys. So we'll be following their careers very closely. And that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks again to Full Press Coverage. Check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. You can also check out the YouTube at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. And we'll be back next week with a couple of podcasts previewing the NBA season that is almost right on our doorsteps, and talking a little bit about this GM survey that came out this week, and seeing how the NBA GMs look at what the awards will be this season and what teams they're predicting are going to win it all. So plenty to talk about. And we'll see if there's any other stories that crop up over the weekend. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you later. See ya.